I must thank Nagaon College for this session and for inviting me to speak on a subject which is very close to my heart. And for anyone who is intrigued by cinema, I think they can speak for hours on cinema. So I will straight away start with a few quotes about cinema, and as you can read that it is as diverse as possible. And the reason behind this is it's very difficult to categorize cinema as such. And one of them is from James Monaco's book How to Read a Film, and it reads, the great thing about literature is that you can imagine, and the great thing about film is that you can't. The reason I brought this quote is because it is from a seminal book, How to Read a Film, and all the film critics, or most of them, have used this book as a reference in some point of time or the other, and so did I. The question is, whenever it comes to films, we speak about reading a film. And so I was pleasantly surprised when the topic of today's discussion was how to watch a film. So the question, more importantly, is that whether we read a film like a book, or we watch a film like a painting, or we hear a film like a musical piece. Now, I will try to give you some inputs, my viewpoints about what I feel about cinema, because it is actually an amalgamation of all these three faculties, or these three senses which we have. We do read, we do watch, and we do hear when we actually experience a film, or we go to a cinema hall and we see or watch a film. So even before we get into some of the specific aspects of cinema, some of the specific aspects of film, the question to me is why we need to watch a film. And I think Mr. Shinapati also touched upon this in some words, is that it actually represents our experience as human beings. So not only cinema, not only films, but any art form actually, to me, helps in our understanding of the world around us, and that in turn helps us to understand our own lives, understand ourselves in the context of the society, in the context of the time in which we are. When we watch a film of the 1940s in, say, Italy, we see bicycle thieves, then we get to know how it was after the war, the Second World War in Italy, and then we can try to correlate that experience with some experience in our lives in 2021 in India. It need not be the same, but what it should do or should try to do is to inspire us and to make us reflect on the life in which we are. We may feel privileged because we are spending a better life than the 1940s Italy. We may feel privileged that we are spending a better life than the 1930s India. We may be privileged because we are spending a better life than the 1980s Iran. Whatever it is about our relation and how we reflect to the world around us, and how we reflect internally and see where we stand as individuals, as societies, as families, as linguistic groups, collectively. So, the better a viewer reads an image, when by image I mean a film in this case, he or she understands the physical reality which is around him or her, and the different cultural references, the different sets of meanings. And these sets of meanings is very important, because for all the great filmmakers, it is actually the meanings which we are trying to figure out. There are certain things which Mr. Shinapati also mentioned that we have to know about their culture, we have to know about the history of the place.
Sir, he is Sabhapandit, not Senapati.
Sorry?
He is Sanjeev Sabhapandit, not Senapati.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, my mistake. Mr. Sabhapandit. So he mentioned about the cultural history which we need to know, and the political history also which we need to know. So that helps us in deciphering the meanings which the filmmakers are actually putting in their films. But even before all of these, I will draw your attention to something called a Cave of Forgotten Dreams. This is the name of a documentary, but it is about a cave, which is the Chauvet Cave in southeast France. It was found out, I think, in the 1990s, early 1990s, I think 94, 95, sometime like that. And inside it, there are cave paintings on the walls. And those, the radiocarbon dating of those cave paintings date back to around 35 to 40,000 years ago. So there are cave paintings which human civilization found out in the last 20 years, which date, or 25 years, which date back to 30, 35,000 years back. Now, very interestingly, apart from many other things, there were drawings of animals with 8 legs. And and at that time, the archaeologists were baffled whether there were animals like bisons or horses with 8 legs or not. But they subsequently found out that there were no animals at any point in time which had 8 legs, which looked like bisons or horses. And then this is one of the pictures. If you can see it on screen, I have numbered them as 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see that there are 4 hind legs and there are 4 front legs. So then what they found out is that when in these dark caves, those ancient men 30,000 years ago lit torches and just waved in front of these walls, these bisons looked like as if they were running. So the first 4 legs are actually 2 legs in 2 different motion, and the 4 hind legs are 2 legs in 2 different motion. Now, if you think of this, it is the same concept which we used in flip books. It is the same concept which we use in cinema. Cinema is nothing but a set of images which are all static. And when we move it in a particular speed, they create a sense of illusion that it is moving. In science, in physics, we came up with the concept of persistence of motion. 30,000 years back, people had that idea. They didn't have the articulation to name it as the persistence of vision. So Werner Herzog, who made this documentary called The Cave of Forgotten Dreams, you can find it in YouTube, I guess. He named it as something called proto-cinema. Cinema was not invented. Camera was not invented. The camera and the cinema is 100, 120, 130 years old thing. The camera is even older, but the movie camera is like that. But we're talking about thousands of years. And yet, with the human imagination, people had this idea of moving still images, which creates an illusion of motion. At the same time, in these caves and many other caves which are more or less have the same timeline, there were hand imprints. They use blow and spring print by using blowpipes, and you can see that there are 2 images side by side. The one on the left is on the El Castillo cave, which was in Spain. This dates back to around 37,000 years ago. The right hand one is in Sulawesi cave, Indonesia, which is 40,000 years ago. And they look almost the same. What I'm trying to hint at is this need of leaving behind your own impression, this need to keep something for the future generations to remember you. This same need is what makes us take selfie pictures and post it on the Facebooks and Instagrams. The need has remained the same. The need to create movement out of static images, the need to create or leave behind our own images or our own remaining things for the future generations to come back and look at it remains the same. It is with the same need we go to monuments and people scribble their names. It's with the same need people go to the forests and scribble their names on the barks of the trees. Nothing has changed for the last 30,000 years. Human imagination has brought in new technologies. I will just show you this painting is on a wall. This is not an interactive session, so I don't have an option of asking you how old is this or how old is this. But these are by my son around 10 years back. He is doing the same thing or similar thing what people in the caves used to do 30,000 years ago. The human history in trying to address what they see around them and in trying to address what they want to see is something which hasn't changed. The only thing which has changed is how we dress, what technological devices we use. So when we come to these discussions about watching films, what we need to know is that we have to accept that everything was almost there beforehand. The question can be that what is the need for an artist to express himself if all the paintings were already done? If you look at the later paintings of Picasso, and he used to travel a lot in the caves of Spain when those were open, you will find that they have a reflection in the way he used to draw at a later point in his life. And the journey was towards more simple lines. So the question is not that you have to try to do something which no one ever had done before. The question is that you try to express yourself the way you perceive the world. It may be done in a different way by someone before you. It is not your fault that you were born so many thousands of years after the human civilization started. The only important thing for an artist is to try to create an art form through which he relates to his world, through which his perceptions about his world comes across. And as audience, the reason why we are having this session today, we need to watch or we need to know how to watch a film. We also need to find out through our own experiences how we can relate to an art form. As the consumers of an art form, we should not also have the expectation of watching something which is extremely original, which no one else has done. It is only that we want to see how this art form relates to our day-to-day experience. So the question is whether the film has a language or not. I think the subtext of today's session has understanding language or something like that. Now, film does not literally have a language in the way the literary language has. So it doesn't have a basic linguistic unit in the way we have in Word, or we don't have a formal grammar for that matter. But it does make statements through different ways, and it works to an extent like a language, even if it is not exactly like one. So as I think Principal Sir mentioned in the beginning, we have the shots, which are the most elementary unit in a film, which can be thought of as words. Several shots make a scene, so it can be thought of as sentences. And several sentences make a paragraph, which we can think of as sequences. Now, please note that we do interchange scenes, sequences a lot of time. There are no hard and fast rules like that, because there are no formal grammar in the way we have in literature. But nonetheless, a shot is when we open the or we stop the camera and we end the camera. Whatever is captured in between is a shot, and then we can have multiple shots and make it into a scene. So it's very difficult to differentiate from one another. And one thing, there are examples of filmmakers whose one shot is so long that many other directors may have several scenes in the same time duration. So what I will do, since we have a job to try to understand how to watch film, I'll just give you few aspects of cinema, few aspects of analysis when we go to watch a film. I will just touch upon them very briefly. There is no scope of going into details of them, but I will just give you few of the main things. And as I said, there are several others. So there is something called the narrative, which is very loosely we can think it as the plot line. So we can have a linear narrative, we can have flashbacks, flash forward, we can have dream sequences. So narrative is more or less what we in normal terms call mention it as the storyline. And then we have something called staging. And in filmic terms, we mention it as mise en scene. So it is the setting, the set. So if there are mythological films, then there are a lot of sets. If it is a historical film, there is a different kind of set. And then the space, whether it's the indoor, outdoor, the light, the acting, the costume, and the makeup. Again, the type of the film, the genre of the film, decides the costumes, the makeups, and things like that. So very intuitively, in many cases, when we watch a film and we come out, we say that it is not realistic. So when we say that, we to an extent understand that what we expect from the setting. So if it is set in the 1940s, so we expect a certain type of dressing, a certain pattern of behavior. If there are outdoor shots, we will expect certain types of cars, and so on and so forth. So if that is not fulfilling our expectation, then we say that it is not realistic or it's not as per the time in which it was set. And then we have the cinematography, and we have a lot of things in this which you can look into when you watch a film. There are wide angle lenses, there are telephoto lenses, there are zooms, and then there are different types of focuses. You can see that there are two characters, one in the foreground, one in the background. Both are having the same clarity, or in some cases you will find that the foreground person has clarity, the background person doesn't have clarity. So there are several reasons why the filmmaker uses these things. And once you try to understand like the differences, then you will probably try to figure out a pattern in which these things happen. Why in some cases two characters are both with the same depth of field. In few cases, why they are in different depths of field. The signature of a director is also important. Some directors use similar traits in film after film, in sequence after sequence in the same film, because they are trying to create a signature of their own, and at the same time they're trying to tell something through the way they are representing it. And then there are camera angles. We have high angle, low angle. Then we have the distance, like how is the camera, where is the camera placed, whether it is at a larger distance or it is at a lesser distance, so on and so forth. And the movement of the camera. If the camera moves along with the characters, in few cases we see that the camera moves along with the characters. And in common terms, even not in cinema, I can give you one example from something which you will probably directly relate to, is that when we see a cricket match and when we see a football match, you'll find that the camera is in distinctly different direction. Now, when we see a football match, we normally see it from left to right and right to left. So as if the game is happening in front of us and we are watching it at a perpendicular distance. So the game is happening in front of us, the camera is at this end and it is happening. So we are seeing it from a left to right or a right to left. when we see cricket nowadays, we always see it mostly the main action from the bowler's point of view. So we see the camera is from the bowler's point of view, and then we see the batsman hitting the ball to some direction and the camera moves, or a different camera takes up. So when you can make out these differences, then you will find out in cinema also there are different camera angles and there are different camera movements which the director intentionally does. At least the better directors intentionally do. Then we have the editing, which normally we say as the montage techniques, so the transition techniques. We have jump cuts, we have sharp cuts, we have match cuts, then we have dissolves, fade ins, fade outs. Again, those have meaning. If you watch films like Bergman's or Tarkovsky, you'll find that there are, or the French popular directors, you'll find that the editing techniques are very important. And then we have the sound. So we have music, we have dialogues, we have silence. Uh, in Indian cinema, unfortunately, we don't have much importance on silence, but if you watch many of the European films, you'll find that silence plays a very important role. At times, it plays more powerful role than someone shouting at the top of his voice. So all these and some more actually give you an idea about what are the things which you will look into. So you will look into the storyline, you will look into the into into how the sets were made, how the characters are dressed, how they act, how the editings have been done, whether you feel that okay, there should be something more we needed from this part, or you find that it is too slow and it bores you. So whatever is your experience, if you try to identify why you like something and why you don't like something, then you become a better viewer of cinema. Apart from saying that okay, you liked a film or you haven't liked a film, if you try to analyze why you have liked something or why you haven't liked something, then you actually need to look into these. What I was mentioning here is that in editing we have what is called the montage techniques. So in there are different techniques, like there are dissolves, there are fade ins, fade outs, and then we have jump cuts, match cuts. So even the fade in, fade outs can be of different colors, like we saw in Bergman's films. And then there are these French auteurs; they had different types of cuts as well. And then we have sound, we have music, we have dialogues, and silence. And one aspect which I want to mention here is that in Indian cinema, we normally don't pay much heed to silence, but in many of the European films, you will see that silence plays a very crucial role, more powerful than many sequences which have a lot of noise, a lot of shouting. So all these different aspects, like the editing, the sound, the cinematography, the setting, the narrative, these make a film viewing experience a fulfilling one, or one which we don't want to go back to again. But what is very important to understand is
battery low boli ahi.
Sorry. So one thing which probably a better viewer will want to do is to analyze which of these he or she feels is lacking or is exceptional in a film. So instead of saying that I like this film very much or I didn't like it at all, I think it will be more prudent if we try to understand and analyze a film in terms of these aspects of analysis, and then see like why we don't like a film or why we like a film more than any other. Now, in the interest of time, I will just go into two sub-aspects. One is the distance. So it is part of the cinematography aspect of analysis which I mentioned in the previous slides. And what is important is when we look at a frame, we need to try to understand like which part of the human body, if there is a human being in the frame, we can see. If it is just the face, then it is a close-up. If it is more than that, then it can be a mid shot. And if it is the full length body, then it can be a long shot, so on and so forth. Um, Again, different directors actually use different philosophies for using the different distances. Like for example, Satyajit Ray, he normally uses medium shots, like we see till the waist up, because he wants to keep a distance from the characters and he wants to keep a distance from the incidents which are happening. So what he intends to do, and he intends us to watch, is to watch the characters and the incidents from a distance so that we don't get biased by anyone. Some other directors, like, say, for example, Bergman or Lars von Trier, to an extent, Antonioni, who have extreme close-ups, as if, as audience, we are going behind the or under the skin of the characters. So these are different signatures of the different filmmakers. It has nothing to do with whether this is correct or this is not correct. It's the way they want us to look at the art form which they are trying to create. And there are certain general perceptions about what a close-up means, what a full shot means, what a medium shot means. But more than that, as I said, we have to understand like why someone uses a close-up, or why someone uses less close-up than some other director. So that will give us an understanding of a filmmaker's cinema, a series of films, so on and so forth. The second one is light, which is part of our setting or mise-en-scene. So when we look at a frame, we see how much light is there. So it can be a color film or it can be a black and white film, but how much light is there? So if a frame is well lighted, then it normally means that it is a very happy mood. If it is less lighted, then there may be a drama which is and if it is very dark, then it can be a suspense, it can be too much of tension which is going on. I will show you one still from Charulata. This is a very tense moment in the film, and as you can see that it is at night, and it is a low-key shot. But at the same time, you can make out that there are a lot of light and shade. This light and shade actually creates the tension in the minds of the audience, like what will happen next. On the other hand, if we look at this still from Ray's Gupigain Bhagabain, then you will find that this is a high key shot because this is a song sequence, a happy song sequence. So there is a lot of light in it. So what I'm trying to say is that when you watch a particular film, watch a particular frame, try to see these different aspects. I gave you two examples, one with the distance, the medium shot, the long shots, the close-ups, and the other with the light. Apart from these, which are directly related to the making of the film, we can also look at the other aspects, which are the symbols. Like in literature, we have the figures of speech, we have similes, we have metaphors, alliterations, so on and so forth. In cinema, what we have is symbols. So some filmmakers use the same symbol or similar symbol recurrently. Some others don't use same symbol time and again. But what is important is that with our experience, from our own experiences, we can try to relate to the symbols which are used. In few cases, we will find it difficult because we don't know the cultural background. In few cases, it is so generic that it is easier for us to understand. This is still from The Kid by Charlie Chaplin. So a frame, a wooden frame, a window, a door can be both looked upon as a symbol of freedom. It can also be looked upon as a frame, as an entrapment. Similarly, we have mirrors used in many cases, many films. We use water as symbol. We have seen sky as used as symbol. We have seen trees used as symbol. So all the great directors have a sort of symbolism embedded in their films. Now, what I will do, I will end my session with one of these symbols, which is the train used in Satyajit Ray's Opu trilogy. The reason I've taken Satyajit Ray is not only because his centenary is this year in 2021, but more importantly, I feel that Satyajit Ray is one director who is the easiest to understand, and yet he is one of the deepest. So it is very easy to explain, and at the same time, you will find that there are so many different interpretations which you can make out from the symbols used in his films. Now, the first time in Opu trilogy, I think many of you must be knowing that there are three films. So it's Pother Panchali, then it's Aparajito, and then Opu Sangsar. Now, in Pother Panchali, Opu goes and watches a train go pass by. So when we see this train sequence, many critics have mentioned that that is Opu's first experience with modernity. It is the first machine which Opu sees in his village life. And he doesn't see it in a village. He has to go to a place outside of the village to have an experience of it. So we see that Opu is running towards the train, this symbol of modernism, and experiencing it. Now, very interestingly, this train comes recurrently in Opu trilogy, but I will not show or tell you that interpretation of train as a symbol of modernism, a symbol of modernity, and a symbol of technology to which Opu tries to adapt himself. I will rather adapt himself, sorry. I will try to rather tell you that every time or most of the time there is a train sequence of some importance and significance in the entire Opu trilogy. It is shortly just after these train sequences, most of them, there is a depth which happens in these films. So just after this experience of the train, Opu comes back, and on his way back with his sister Durga, he sees the death of his aunt Indit Thakurun. So Ray is very clearly but cleverly putting two fasts at the same time. Opu, for the first time, is encountering something which he has never seen, a symbol of modernism, and it elates him. And on his way back, he again encounters a first experience, the first death he encounters in his life, that of his aunt. There will be two clips I will show, but I think it will be difficult to show it from here, so I will stop my sharing now and I will just try to play the video. Let me just see, like, if I can play the video. I will just want you to look into the to try to look into the or listen to the audio here. The audio is not very high, the audio is low, but there is this train sound. So I will ask you, if you can, try to hear the jack up the volume of your audio, and there will be train sound which you probably can try to hear. So I will try to do a screen share in a different way, which I heard will probably work better. So can you see the screen? Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let me just try to play this video clip. I don't know whether the sound could be heard,
Yes,
but
sorry, sound is coming. Sorry.
okay. So this was the first one, and you can see that after the train, Opu's first interaction with the train, and he was running towards it. He and I didn't have the entire sequence here. This is the old aunt, and these two children will find that this old aunt is dead. So the moments after this first interaction with modernity, Opu experiences the first death in his life. I will now go to the second clip. This is after Horihar returns and after Durga dies. Horihar is the father of Opu and Durga, and he was not there when the sister passed away. So once he comes back and he finds that his daughter is dead. So this is the sequence. So this second clip is actually very faint. So I don't know, like the train, the sound of the train you could hear or not. If you didn't have a chance, please watch this part of the film again, and I hope you can hear the sound of the train, which is a very faint sound of the train receding, and Horihar looks at is a bit distracted. The others are in the family are sleeping. Horihar is not, and he could make out that the train, and for the last time, you will hear the sound of the train in Pathe Panchali, taking his beloved Durga away from him. So every time there is a death happening in the Opu trilogy, it follows up with that of a train sequence. Now, in Aparajito, you'll find that on the left hand side, this is the picture of Opu, a young Opu, looking at the train at a distance. Train is not something which is new like it was in Pathe Panchali. So there was no running towards the train to look at what the beast is. But nonetheless, the train acts as something for which he has a dream, because he knows that the train will take him to Kolkata, because he doesn't want to live in the village. He wants to go to Kolkata and become a modern man. And the same train, you can see almost the same shot, almost the same angle, almost the same direction. It is his mother Sarvajaya who waits for his son to come back in the same train. The train which takes someone to Kolkata, takes someone to the modern world, is the same train which takes someone away from the near ones. It's the same train which makes the mother wait for the son to come back to her. And the son doesn't come. The son comes back only when the mother is dead. In Opu Sangsar, the third part of Opu trilogy, Opu lives in a house, in an apartment, which is literally beside the railway track. So the train is now in an integral part of his life. We hear the sound of the train, the whistles of the train. We can make out that the train is a very organic part of his life. And when Aparna, his wife, dies, Opu tries to commit suicide, but he cannot. But the most iconic usage of train is not in a motion sequence, but in 3 still images in Opu's Sangsar. Just before Aparna leaves for his paternal house, for her paternal house, because of childbirth, she was going there. We find that there is a still shot. If you can see my screen, it is a still shot of Aparna, and it is not that I have taken the still shot of a moving image. It is actually a still in the film itself. There is no movement. But Aparna, from her face, we can make out is concealing a lot of storm inside her. This shot, which is a still shot, is followed by one of Opu. He doesn't have the calmness which Aparna has. He is literally upset because she is leaving him. And the next shot, again a still, is that of an engine, a train, and Opu knows that the train will take Aparna away from him, and she will never return. So, all great directors use a lot of faculties which we should be using, which they use while making the film. So, it is not only to watch, you have to listen to what Harihar listens when the faint sound of the train recedes in the background. You have to watch that there are stills of Opu and Aparna and the train, and it signifies something because through the first 2 films, Ray has already established the importance of train as a death metaphor. For the improved audience, for the audience who wants to watch film more intriguingly, he or she needs to look into all these aspects. So not only read films, not only watch films, but also hear it through our auditory senses. And then only it will match the experience which the artist, the director wants us to experience from. Thank you.